Hi, everyone. Welcome to the History Club. On November 2023, this month we have the absolutely fabulous Rita Wild. And Rita was the original coordinator of Lasi, was the predecessor organization to Here and I. And Rita's going to take us through a bit of a journey from what it was like back then and take us through almost to present day. Um, so Rita, if we can start at the start, really. Back in the day, you were uh, working in Cork for an organization called Link, which was for lesbians in Cork, and I believe that was the first uh, in Ireland, the first lesbian resource centre. Yes, and uh, so that had similar services. I've provided advice and advocacy to lesbian and bisexual women. Yep. Okay. And then there was the successful funding application for Lassie. So it came into being, and then they were looking around for someone fabulous and experienced in the field. And you were lucky enough to get the post. Yep, amazing. So what was it like in the early days of Lassie when you first started there? And that involved also a move from Cork to Belfast.
This is the story of my life. This is what's going to be on my headstone. You're on mute. Uh, they were hairy times. I've had some marvelous opening lines. Nobody ever heard them because I was on mute. Yeah, new legislation had just come into force. So in the south of Ireland, for example, in 2000 was goods and services legislation, the Equality Act. So there are big changes happening around the place. But in Northern Ireland, there was still Ian Paisley trying to save us all from sodomy. And, it felt like a backwater in terms of what was happening in the rest of Ireland, which was suddenly blossoming. And, Scotland, Wales, and England. So it was really exciting to think that you could make a difference and you could make a change. Now, my memory's not brilliant with dates, so I'm going to have to rely on the like of Fidelma and other people who were there in those heady days. Which things like the Women's Coalition had come into being. Stormont was up and running just about. For the first time, the queers actually had real access to the levers of power in Northern Ireland. Because suddenly we had levers of power that we could pull on that hadn't really been there previously. So that was all very exciting. But it was also kind of daunting when the sort of people you had to face off were Ian Paisley and Arlene Foster. It wasn't exactly a friendly audience. So I really remember that feeling of having to sit in a room with those people and say lesbian out loud. And they often couldn't say lesbian back. They actually couldn't pronounce it. And I sometimes used to say to people say to me, what do you do for a living? I would say, I stand up in rooms and say lesbian out loud. Because that's what it felt like I did for a living. That felt like the hardest thing I had to do. And now, sure, lesbian and queer's tripping off our lips like it was never a problem. But it's hard to believe the difference between then and now, really, I think. So I don't know, Fidelma, what do you remember about those that was around about 2004?
Yeah, I think it was before the legislation really kicked in. Because at that point in time, we didn't have legislation around goods and services. We didn't have legislation around, discrimination in terms of employment. So we had Section 75, and Section 75 it made a big difference because it included sexual orientation as one of the 9 categories, which is the first time anywhere in the UK, and it forced organisation, government departments, and public bodies to actually consider how their policy impacted positively or negatively on the ground of sexual orientation. But and that scared the bejesus out of them. But it wasn't a particularly strong legislation. It was only related to policy. It wasn't anti-discrimination legislation. So
I'd
we're
forgotten
really,
about Section 75.
yeah. So I think that kind of opened the door in some ways, you know, in terms of at least the statutory level. But at that point, yeah, you were trying to win the right to be not discriminated against on the grounds of employment and the grounds of goods and services. So those pieces of legislation were been talked about, but certainly in 2000 hadn't come into place. It was
No.
I think it was 2006, I think, before the Employment Equality Act came into place and the Goods and
That's
Services
right.
Act. So
For
And we
anybody
had,
younger listening, would there have been people who were sacked when it was discovered that they were LGBT in organizations, or simply not hired in the first place?
I've had friends of mine pre to what Fidelma and Rita are talking about in retail, and a friend of mine went in. She was working in one of the retail places in Belfast. Went in. She happened, as we do in workplaces, we get friendly with people. Now it's all, as Rita says, it's all sparkly now, but sometimes in the day you would sort of say, "Oh, Rita, I've something to tell you," and they'll either take it okay, or they won't take it okay. My friend's person in work didn't take it okay, told the management, and she got sacked, and that really was the end of that. And that was 90s, probably is around the time you're talking about, Rita, in fairness. You know, I mean, I remember when Section 75 was being talked about in unison. Now, Fidelma's the one with the policy head, so she knows more about stuff than I do, but it was being talked about. And I do remember going to unison conferences, and yeah, they were way ahead of us. They were talking about pensions and changing the consent age and stuff. And we were coming back, and people were still very much in closets.
Yeah.
the trade unions were, Unison in particular, was really instrumental in the north of Ireland in terms of pushing for queer equality. So there weren't very many open doors back then in terms of organisations, but Unison was always a good open door because there were great people in there.
well, Marie
Like-
Mulholland, Marie Mulholland got me into Unison in the 90s. You know,
Yeah.
so you're looking at very strong kind of out queer women that were out, you know, that time that
Yes.
were driving that agenda. And obviously people like our straight allies like Pamela Dooley, who since died, you know, would have
Yes.
been very much advocates for that as well. So sorry, I know I saw
Yes.
Cara was
Or
looking
do
to
you
come in
have-
there.
Yeah, Cara, do you have a question?
Just really a comment, and interestingly, this complete project is I suppose charting our history from Section 75 to now. So that's the area of history we're looking at in this specific project.
Okay, interesting.
Yep.
But a few of the things Joe and I pulled out a few things that I kind of remember as being interesting. Civil partnerships, obviously we can't not talk about civil partnerships. But one of the things, and this is how I come to be here this evening, was I had got in touch with Cara. I can't even remember now what triggered it in me. But I remembered when I was with Lasi, we commissioned a few questions in an Ipsos Mori poll. So we asked people, how would you feel about your neighbour if they were lesbian, gay, or bisexual? I can't even remember the exact questions now, but there were 4 questions, and they were all really around trying to get a sense of the attitudes. And the brilliant thing about the Ipsos Mori stuff was they broke everything down by demographic. So you could break the answers down by age, by religion, by social class. So you could pick out who were the most bigoted people in the north of Ireland and who were the least bigoted. So the amount of data just in those 4 questions was massive. And it was brilliant it was really media friendly stuff. And again, Joe and I were talking about this earlier about the media has always wanted us to bring out the body bags. Tell us about the trauma. Tell us how awful everything is. And if you want a bit of money or you want a bit of funding for something, what they're interested in is the terrible stories. But the problem with that is and there are plenty of terrible stories. But the problem with telling the terrible stories publicly is you re-traumatize queer people. We don't need to hear those terrible stories. We know them already. What we need to hear is we need to hear better stories. We need to hear about the progress. We need to hear about the good stuff. So the Maury poll was very much coming from that place, was because we knew that the vast majority of people in Northern Ireland were not bigots. We knew most people were perfectly grand and were quite happy to leave you be as long as you left them be. But you wouldn't know that from listening to the media, because all we were hearing on the media was Paisley and Arlene and all that nasty nonsense. So the Maury poll came out to say, well, actually, have a look at the data. The data says 75% of people under 45 in Northern Ireland have no problem with gay people. So this was so wonderful to be able to go to the press with these good news stories that were groundbreaking, earth-shattering, because it was the data. And then there was the really funny stuff that we could pull out of it. So, like, who were the most bigoted people in Northern Ireland according to the data? Well, it was rural Protestant men aged 55 and over. And who were the least bigoted people in Northern Ireland? It was urban Catholic women aged 20 to 30. So, I mean, that was crack when you could pull out all these things and play with it. So why did I start telling you about that? So that stands out as something I would love to see that repeated today with the very same questions. Because that's about 20 years ago now that we asked those questions. So how much will have changed in those 20 years? And I would say it'll be massive if it was to be rerun. Like, the difference is incredible. But anyway, does anybody else remember the Maury poll? Or is that...
I think the Life and Times surveys now kind of capture some of that information, which is quite useful
Do
in terms
they?
of have more contemporary attitudes, because they were the first survey to ask about things about trans people as well.
Okay.
And I think they consistently found that people were more like reluctant to live beside a trans person than beside a traveller, if you're talking about the hierarchy of kind of discrimination. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, and the last one that was LGB, they didn't include the T on the monitoring questions as well.
That's so sad, isn't it? Really sad. It was an attitude survey here in the south. Oh, I don't know. Was it this year or the end of last year? And queer people, how happy would you be to live beside somebody? And they went through the various 9 grounds. And I was shocked to find that the 3 bottom, trans people were grand. Nobody had any bother with trans people. Nobody had any bother with gay or lesbian people. The people I had bother with were unemployed people, drug users, and travellers. So the difference, like, literally the gay and lesbian people were not. It just wasn't a feature. Like, 95% of people were completely happy. I think it was ridiculous. There was no problem at all with gay people. But unemployed people? Like, what? What? Why did you not want to live beside somebody who was unemployed? So I just really don't understand that at all. But certainly we've moved off the bottom. If you're white and able-bodied and cisgendered and also gay or lesbian, you're kind of doing all right compared to how you were doing 20 years ago. But that's not true if you're black or brown or have a disability or are poor, or, you know. So within our own communities, some of us are doing grand, but some of us aren't doing so well at all.
Rita, quick question on the poll that you were just talking about in the South.
Mm.
Were immigrants or refugees listed?
Mm. Yes.
Okay, so they were separate from unemployed.
Yeah, they came around the middle.
Okay.
Yeah, they came in around the middle. But the ones
Yeah,
that really like,
as long as they're employed.
as long as they're employed refugees, as long as they're
Yeah.
not drug addicted refugees. So yeah, so that it surprised the life out of me really, that how things have changed just in the space of my lifetime. When I first came out via lesbian line in the late 1980s, early 90s. And I was afraid that I might have lost custody of my child when I came out. So I had a plan, an escape plan, to run to a friend in the south of Ireland with the child. So there was a bag packed for 3 years, ready to go. Now, like, that was, I talk about that now and it sounds like I'm making it up. You know, that could be real, like just 35 years ago. But so things have changed enormously.
There were cases in the Northern Ireland courts where people did lose custody of children when they came out because the husbands argued that they weren't fit to be parents.
That's right. I was quoted. I was used in a court case in Belfast. So my partner, Marion Fleming, and I had a shop in Hollywood. And my daughter Katie went to the Steiner School in Hollywood. And one of the other parents at the school, well, actually, two of the parents at the school fell in love with each other. Two women fell in love with each other and started a relationship, left their respective husbands. The husbands went mad and went to court for custody of the children. And I was quoted in court as being a bad influence. That his wife was seen hanging out in my shop, and that I had caused her to be lesbian.
No better compliment could have been attributed to you.
I was like, where's the check? Do we not get paid for this service to the
Rita,
community?
Is that what happened to me too? I was hanging out in your shop as well.
Is that what?
Marion,
See, look.
Many a time. And I had somebody else's children with me as well.
See, look, and they're probably queer too.
Yeah.
What kind of a shop
Well,
was it?
not sure about that.
It was a queer shop.
Definitely.
It was a how to be queer shop. Yeah, so it was. I mean, they were wild times. Like,
So yeah, you were blamed on
I was blamed. Yeah,
turning these women into lesbians.
yeah. In court, named in court. There will be the court
Wow.
documents with my name on it. I mean, that's
terrible.
just, yeah. And the fecker got joint custody of his children. I mean, can you believe it? Yeah. One
So
of the
you've always been an activist, Rita, but you kind of had an agreement with your own daughter that you wouldn't do anything public until she had turned 18, and that was
that's right.
to protect her because it was such a vicious climate and a homophobic one.
Really, and I mean, I was out, and you know, everybody knew Katie and knew me. So like anybody who knew me then, Fidelma, would have known Katie. Like I was very out, but I didn't do anything mainstream public. So I wouldn't do radio or television or newspaper because I really didn't want it impacting on Katie. Then when she turned 18, the job in Cork came up and I was working in community development. So the job in Cork with Link came up, and it was the first kind of opportunity that I had to like go full throttle. Like, I'm coming for you, you feckers. So that was just,
it's called being a professional lesbian.
that's what it
There
is.
weren't very many professional lesbian jobs back then.
That's right. I
And they
was the
weren't
only one.
funded either.
Yeah, I was the only one. I was the only funded lesbian post in Ireland at that time. I mean, isn't that mad? So yeah, and that's it. I would go into rooms, and like one of the things I want to just say something here for travellers. So that first post with Link was funded by the Irish government through the Equality for Women Measure project. And that was an attempt to kind of front load women's organisations to address the inequality that women faced. So the steering group that I eventually worked with, the group of women in Cork, saw this as an opportunity to get funding for a lesbian organisation. So they applied and were successful. So part of this programme was the workers who were employed under the measure would be brought together every quarter for seminars, learning about all sorts of everything. Well, there were a load of lesbian women in that room who were employed by other organisations, Poverty Action or the Women's Council, National Women's Council, whatever, a bunch of lesbians in the room. And none of them could look me in the eye because they were afraid of their life, that by talking to me, somebody would think they were lesbian too. The only people who would sit with me were the traveller woman. So me and the traveller woman used to go out smoking fags and having the crack, because neither the cis straight woman nor the other closeted lesbians in that programme wanted to be associated with the out lesbian. And that really stung, because I knew those women. And, to be cold-shouldered like that by your own community really stung. But it also taught me a lot about allies and who our allies actually are. So I just want to big up traveller women who weren't afraid to be seen with a lesbian. So
Brilliant.
yeah.
And so then, Rita, in the early days of Lassie, did it offer similar services? Is it similar to what Here and I is now, or was it a different kind of service?
It was much more policy focused. So when I started in post, we didn't have an office in Belfast. I worked from home. I had a home office because we didn't have the money for an office. And then there were all sorts of questions. Once you have an office, you had to have all sorts of policies about people coming and going. So for the first kind of year, 12, 18 months of the project, we focused solely on policy issues and kind of establishing Lassie as a voice, establishing Lassie as a point of contact, establishing relationships with the statutory agencies, with the government officials, with the politicians. So really it was more background than front facing work. So it was really only after the second round of funding that the kind of supports and services that Here and I have now started to be developed. So one of the things that we have to talk about is civil partnerships and how it came to be that the first civil partnerships happened in Northern Ireland and happened to be a lesbian couple, Grania and Shannon. So civil partnership legislation had been being lobbied for and had finally been agreed. And there was a wee archaic quirk in the way the Northern Ireland agreement, I can't remember the name of the particular piece of legislation, was written, that meant that new legislation came into force in Northern Ireland at 12 midnight of the day it was due. But in the rest of the United Kingdom, It didn't come into force until 12 noon.
It was to do it actually that it was to do it the notification. So in order to get married, you have to notify a minimum of, I think Northern Ireland was 15 days and the rest of the UK was 16 days. So of course, as soon as the notification, the legislation was legal, Grania and Shannon were able to, like lots of gay couples registered. But because Northern Ireland only had to wait for 15 days, then that's why we went first.
Thank you, Fidelma. So that meant that the entire world's press was going to descend on Belfast for a lesbian civil partnership. So the lesbian organisation was going to be very much in the spotlight. That whole thing was mad. I was telling Joe earlier on, so I was kind of managing the press on the ground on the day of the civil partnership around the City Hall. So the press all over the world, I don't know how many interviews I did that morning, like 30. Everybody was there. And I was standing at the front of the City Hall at one point, just having finished an interview with the BBC, when the BBC researcher was trying to get comments from the public about what was happening in City Hall that day. And I watched them and counted while they asked 22 people before they got one person who said they didn't approve. The 22 people before them all said, sure, isn't it great? I hope they have a lovely day. Sure, isn't that marvellous? Sure, it's a grand day for it. Sure, isn't that great? Sure, look, live and let live. That was it. 22 people. One person went, oh no, I don't approve. What did they put out on the BBC that night? One person saying that's great. The one person that didn't approve saying, no, I don't approve. So you got the clear impression on the BBC that the public was split. The public was not split. It was hard to find somebody who objected. They had to really work hard to find them. And that has stayed with me. Like, so I'm standing right in front of them watching them do it, like. And they just barefaced, weren't even ashamed that that's how they were going about reporting the news.
But
that
there were
was
at the back gate there was a protest, because I know I was there. The
That's
Unison
right.
banner and lots of others were there to support Grania and Shannon going in. But there
That's
was
right.
a protest from Christians who felt that this was not acceptable in their eyes. So there was, so. But in terms of general, you're right. In terms of general public, most people didn't really care.
Yeah. And am I right in saying there were some great banners at the back of the City Hall? Can you remember any of them, Fidelma? Like the anti kind of far
I'm seeing
ones?
I'm a middle-aged one with brain fog. I'm blaming the
Yeah,
menopause
you're
for
doing
everything.
brilliantly. I'm so impressed with you.
But no, I just remember being there with Pamela and with the Unison banner and seeing Shannon and Grania go in and cheering them on and stuff. So
There was something that there were definitely some really funny banners that day. I wish I could remember them. We had also set up, Lassie had paid for tea and coffee for everybody in the hotel for all the supporters. Did you go to the hotel afterwards? Or did you have to go back to work?
no, I didn't get the memo.
You didn't get the
memo? I missed that memo.
You missed that memo, yeah. And 10 Square, I think that was the hotel. It was very posh. And everybody was very impressed that's what the queers were going for their tea. But that was it. I mean, that was seriously good crack that day, and amazing that the lesbians got it. And what a job Shannon and Grania did in terms of best foot forward.
Yeah, that must have been a nerve-wracking day, knowing that there was going to be protests.
I remember that day well because I was in the front part of City Hall, and I had just got in before they closed the doors. But I had to laugh. All the religious, the Free Peace, marched in one after the other, about 20 of them, and there was one woman amongst them.
Yeah.
You want to say something?
I think as well, Rita, I'm just thinking there, of the first civil partnerships. I remember it as clearly because I got my gallbladder out and I was friendly with the two guys. and was meant to go to the wedding that day. So I was lying in bed watching the TV going, is this for real? I actually can't believe this. This is making the world's kind of news. And then, you know, I'm just thinking back to a couple of years ago, myself and my wife, we were the first ones in Belfast City Council to convert our civil partnership to and again about 3 hours of media after that. But even the difference in societal attitudes, even from then to when a couple of years ago we converted our civil partnership, and it was very quiet. It was just us in the media because it was during COVID, and we went and got to McDonald's after drive-through and came home and sat with the dogs because everywhere was closed. But yeah, really interesting actually, just thinking of the experience we had converting and the massive crowds that day at City Hall.
And was that it similar? Did that happen? The conversion, was that the first in the UK region? Or was it?
No, because the
no.
UK had recognised civil partnership conversion because they had marriage. So when they introduced marriage in GB, then there was an option for civil partnership, and they had marriage before we did.
They did.
Yeah. So sorry, Emma,
Did they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had to fight for sure. We
And
didn't get it till we got it for years
down
after.
south, yeah, down south as well.
Jeez, I'd forgotten about that completely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd completely forgotten that they got marriage across the way, and the fuckers wouldn't have it here. Yeah, sorry about that. Swearing.
And you know
I've
what,
forgotten more than I remember.
Lassie was obviously a big part of that, Rita, you know, as you were describing. And here and I were a big part of the Love Equality campaign, the campaign for civil marriage as well, which is great.
Yeah, GB
Was
got
it
it in
not-
2014. Sorry,
Yeah.
not in Wales, certain England and Wales got it in 2014. I think Scotland might have been
Yeah.
different. Sorry, Emma, you were waiting to come in there. Sorry.
Yeah, hi. If there's a few people I know, a few people I don't.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, did everyone in this call know that we have until Wednesday to convert their civil partnership?
You will know to do it for free.
Yeah, but Finn and I have no idea what happens after Wednesday.
Oh,
Is there-
no, they charge you.
Can I just
There's a fee. That's the only difference. You can still do it, but I think there's a fee.
Really?
Isn't that right, Cara?
Sorry.
Aye.
No, I think they dissolve your wedding, Emma, if you don't convert.
No,
it.
there is more. There is something legal.
You're not
to
going
it,
to be
yeah.
married anymore.
Yeah, because
after
Finn had
Wednesday.
to go down and deal
What
with
you
something.
actually need to do is, if you do not make the conversion before the 6th of December of this year, you will have to dissolve your civil partnership and get married.
Yeah.
And you will not be able to have your civil partnership date on your marriage
Backdated.
certificate, but you will have to dissolve your civil partnership. Is because I happen to be
It's just potluck, actually.
at training and bumped into Vivian, who was the registrar for our conversion, and I was like, oh, and she was like, yeah, you know, the 3 years is up, and I went, oh God, we all forgot about that with COVID. So we have been pushing it, and then I went back and started asking the questions, and that's the actual answer. Sorry, I've been listening in the background.
But you know what, it's as well, when I was doing that training, because we did forget. I'd say most people forgot. So people are rushing now to get.
We are
and you know what? To be honest with you, we know some people that have done it within the last couple of days. They're accommodating people very quickly with dates.
I was just going to say, so we have last minute booked it. We haven't told anyone, and we're going to do it on the last day. But we're literally not. We're taking the kids, and that's it. And just because it's just all of a sudden happened, and I thought if it was just a matter of the payment, we would just, because they were sort of not ready, just there's too much going on. But apparently there was that legislation implication also, and I just thought, well, we've been fighting for years and years and years, and not about to give it up, you know. So yeah, but also I don't like, apologies, I missed the start of this call, but I'm really interested in this call for lots of reasons, because I'm obviously attend here NI and the parents group in particular because I have 3 children, but Rita and Cara will know, and Fidelma, I have a 24-year-old also, and Rita, I don't think I've ever met you. I think I did maybe once years ago, but we started attending, we were like the official first families with Lassie, And I remember phoning you once when our eldest daughter was in primary school, just because I knew at that stage no other gay women with children. And you told me about Lassie, so you mightn't even remember that phone call, but I was pretty upset going, what am I meant to do? And then it's such a small world because Cara was one of my lecturers in Queen's at the same time. So and that's sort of like how it all happened. And then we started going to Lassie, Finn and I, with Alex, when Alex was only, Cara, what age was Alex then? Like 3, 4. And Alex went right up to Lassie, and now we have twins that are 12 that now go to here NI. So it's like came full circle around. But
That's
that's how long
amazing.
we've been involved, like for about 22 years or so, maybe 23.
That's amazing, Emma.
I know, it's crazy. So when I saw this, I was in work and I saw this about the history of Lassie and Hera, and I was like, I have to join this call to hear
Yep.
what's going
Fair
on.
play to you.
That,
you-
that leads us nicely on to the stickers. Lesbians are everywhere.
The
doesn't it?
lesbians are everywhere. I'll come back to that in 1 second, but something that I just want to say to Emma that Emma's brought up, and like anybody here, Carol will know this, anybody that's done lesbian line or any kind of queer stuff, like you get those phone calls. I made that phone call, I call lesbian line, when I was coming out. And they're just, it's such a privilege. Like it is such a privilege to be at the other end of the phone when somebody goes, I'm queer and I'm here. Whatever else the big story is. So, yeah, so thanks a million, Emma.
No, thank you guys. It was just at the time, it really was like a lifeline for all of us, I think, and since then, obviously, we've become very much part of the lesbian community. But at that stage, when I was really young and I guess vulnerable in a sense because I was a single parent and in Queens with nobody, wasn't from Belfast or anything, so it was really, really difficult. So it was a lifeline for me, and then here and then of course we went on to make loads of friends who are still part of our core friendship circle today. So, and now the younger two, they're really good friends. We're good friends again with the next generation of parents too.
It's queer kinship.
That's
So
it.
it's queer kinship.
Queer kinship,
And it's so important. I'd point you to a thing I did again, which chatted to Joe. I did with the Gay Project in Cork during one of the lockdowns. We did an online queer studies program, but we just went for it for the crack because the funding had to be spent or it had to go back. So no, this was not planned. Like literally, I built the fucking thing. I built the road as I was running along it. Talk about flying by the seat of your pants. But it ended up glorious and lovely. And we talked about all these sort of things. So it was a hedge school, informal education, but with experts who know what they're talking about. So we talked about queer kinship. And what is queer kinship? And how important is it in our lives? And where is it? Where do we find it? How do we build it? So like I would really encourage any of you, if you're interested, to go to the Gay Project, gayproject.com, I think, or gayproject.ie. And under special programs, you'll see a festival of dangerous ideas. And the recordings are all in there, and it is great crack. But really informative about, really important things like queer kinship. So yeah, the final thing, just aware of the time, I'll tell you about is a wee project that I've been working on currently. So you will all be aware that we have a problem in the Republic of Ireland that we've had in the north for a long time, which is the rise of the far right. So I sometimes laugh to myself, people say, oh, these far right ones are terrible. And I go, here, have you met the Paisleys? So they're getting a touch of what we had to put up with in the north and the south. So I've been involved with a crowd called the Hope and Courage Collective. And they're mapping the far right in the south, and they're looking at who they are and what they're doing, how they're working. So they were having a seminar to kind of inform people about what the crack is with the far right. So it was a Zoom like this. I don't know, there were 40 people there. All activists are involved in some way. And we were talking about simple solutions, simple things that we can do. And this relates to the kind of queer kinship thing that Emma was saying. And I remember the thing that we did in Lesbian Line back in the 1990s. So, whoosh, back to the 1990s, before the internet. So Lesbian Line, a telephone, an actual telephone, like a ring dial job, in a room, in an office, in Cathedral Quarter, Cathedral Buildings in Belfast. That was it, like. So visibility was absolutely, like, lesbians were completely invisible. Gay men were a bit visible, but that was only because Paisley was saving everybody from sodomy. So to get a bit of visibility, we decided that we would try and get some sticky labels made, some stickers made. So back then, I don't know if any of you know this or maybe saw your grannies do it, people used to get return address labels made that they would stick on the back of their Christmas cards with their address on it, and they were a wee small wee label, just a tiny wee thing. I'm just looking for something about that size. You know, they were about that size of a thing. If they were even that big, they weren't even that big. They were that size of a thing that you stuck on your envelope. So to get these, you had to fill in a wee form in the back of magazines, or like the back of the Reader's Digest, or Ireland's Own, or Woman's Weekly, or that kind of thing. And you had to send off a check. And the only person who had a checkbook who was in Lesbian Line at that time was Heather Fleming. So Heather Fleming had a checkbook, so she wrote the check. So we didn't even know if they would make the labels for us. So we sent off anyway, and what we put in the wee form was all we wanted on the labels was lesbians are everywhere. So they were a gold label with black writing. Off we sent it very hopefully with the check. It might have been like £5 or something. It wasn't a big deal of money. But Jesus, sure enough, 2 weeks later, the labels arrived back. We were delighted. We filled our pockets and we stuck them everywhere. Now, in fairness, there was only about 4 or 5 of us, so, like, you know, the impact was limited enough. But it was so uplifting to do it, to stick a wee sticker up there, to make a mark in the world that you were there. And it was absolutely delightful when you came across one in the wild that you hadn't put there. You're like, oh, lesbians really are everywhere.
Rita, then
So-
we extended that to graffiti in our Lesbian Avenger days. So
That's right.
we did the whole graffiti, lesbians are everywhere using graffiti, and I have I actually did a 10x9 talking about my time in the Lesbian Avengers, my brief time in the Lesbian Avengers, and our campaign, building on yours at the stickers, but going full spray paint. Myself
Love
and
it.
Katrine Covert and others. So I'll put that in if anybody's interested in listening to that. But yes, so we took that and we went out with our spray cans and our little Dyke Power kind of
Love
like
it.
cutouts and did that around Belfast. So
Well,
Brilliant.
following on from Fidelma, I remember can't remember which year I was involved with Pride. Were you around Fidelma then? At that point, I was the unison rep in the LGBT Pride that year with PA and stuff. But Pamela Sweeney and I, following on from you two, went up and down Botanic. I think it was Dance with Pride or something like that. I put posters up and down Botanic ourselves with the paste from the wallpaper, and whole crack was going, you know.
I think that about the same year that Jean McMinn and Paula got kicked out of that
Yeah,
restaurant.
I think you're right.
That's
yeah,
right.
I think you're right.
In Botanic, Vincent's.
In Botanic, and we all went up and had posters.
And we all had to protest straight after
That's
Pride.
right,
We
we
all
had
took
to
the
kiss
bus
in.
up and we had to kiss
Yeah.
him. And one of the guys, Jonathan, who worked there, lived in our house. So me and Sarah Tibbs were not impressed with Jonathan because Jonathan tried to defend Vincent's and we were so unimpressed. So we
But
don't think we
were they
we didn't
not?
talk
Were
to them
they
for a
not?
week.
Were they not tipped off? Because when we arrived, it was all closed down.
They knew, yeah, they were. Well, I think they knew we were coming and stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they closed it. They closed the doors, but we had our protest outside. So
Yeah,
yeah,
we did.
yeah.
Those were the days. So I told that wee story about the stickers in the Open Collective thing, and an old friend of mine who's now a funder said, "Here, stickers are a great idea. I give you money if you want to make stickers." That's like, "I happy take your money and make stickers." And somebody else in the group, another old activist that I know, said, "Here, I know a designer who might be really interested in doing that with you." A woman called Holly Piera. And I don't know if any of you are aware of Holly up there, but she's a great woman. And she's a street artist. She does murals. And she did a big repeal mural at the time of the repeal campaign in Dublin. They got great time. She's a great woman altogether. So she and I got together with a wee grant from the Rowan Trust, and we made 32,000 fully compostable lovely stickers. And 3 types. Can you see them? Queer it up. Culture is unlimited. Love, organize, resist. So these stickers are a wee project called Resist-Stickers, Stickers for Resistance. And they've appeared all over the world at this stage. The most recent one, I have a photograph of one stuck at a flagpole at the border post between Mexico and America, saying love, organize, resist. We have a Queer It Up at the Vatican. Just they're all over the place, great crack. So, and I'll happily send you stickers if you want me to send a bunch up to Cara. You can get some from her. They're free, which is the other great thing, and fully compostable, so will cause no harm to the planet. So that's one of my latest wee projects.
Brilliant. That would be amazing, Fidelma, if you could send us up some stickers. And also while
I'm
we're
going to leave that to Rita. I'm going to leave that to Rita. 'Cause I don't have them yet, so I will get some from Rita.
yes, absolutely. And when anybody's on holiday, take a wee look around and look out for them. And if you see them, take a photo of them.
And take some with you and stick some.
Yes.
That's proper activism.
Yep.
Little pops of joy all over the world.
Keep me some, please, and I'll definitely plaster them in lots of official places.
Go on, Emma. That's
Don't
it.
you worry, I will.
Joe, I was trying to get see, can I get a link to the original Marie Curies A Mighty Silence report in 2002? But I just jumped online, but while it's referenced, it's no longer hosted in its entirety online. Is there a copy available as a PDF that can be shared? Because I think that people might be interested in that. I have a physical copy, but I don't have a PDF.
We've just the hard copies as well, I think, because we got our website redone years ago and they were lost. I'll have a wee look and see, but I'll ask Tracy tomorrow.
Marie Curie might have a copy.
As it will, I think it's just as a PDF, maybe. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I can email her and see if she has a copy, and if not,
Yeah, as a PDF. Yeah,
we can scan one in and create a PDF from it, from the hard copy.
I have a hard copy. I'm sure somebody up there has one, but yeah, no, it would be great to have. There's some good archival material. I mean, there's a wee project in that, Cara, and I'm sure there'll be a bit of funding for it.
Part of this project, Rita.
Okay, to do a bit of archiving.
We have an online archive, this project.
Because I have copies of, say, the Shout report, which myself and Sharon Redmond did. And I don't know what was about young. It was the first report done around young LGBT people in terms of schools and stuff like that. So
Get that up.
when we were in Newtnet, so so those kind of things, it's good to have them just to document how things have changed and improved.
It's good to have them, and it's also good to map the change and tell people. It's good to remind ourselves how far we've come.
Yeah.
And it's good to remind ourselves that nobody gave that to us. Nobody came along and said, here's some equality for you. Oh, we hear the queers are having a hard time. Let's help you. That never happened. So everything that happened because we did it.
And you know what, Rita, I always think about yourself and you know the people that created this amazing organization. You know, I think when I started there was 2.5 members of staff, and you had your me, myself, and I when it was yourself. So when I started, 2.5, and that's what we were just saying yesterday. We've 11 members of staff now.
Wow.
Here and I, so it just shows you, you know, that's just in the last 5 years. You know, 5 years ago, 4 members of staff, and now we've 11. The 11th person started today.
Isn't
So,
that incredible? Like when you think, like literally I was the only lesbian employee.
and I always say that, Rita, when I'm at meetings, you know, talking about our history, and I say, you know, the first coordinator, there was a PO box number.
That's right.
You know,
This was my house.
Yeah, that's right. And people are like, "What? That's not really that long ago." And I went,
Yeah.
"I know." And now we will have hopefully a brand new state-of-the-art LGBT centre in another maybe 2 years. You know, when you're talking about visibility, hopefully we'll be in a prime position in town, very visible location. But you look, maybe 15 years ago, 16, 17 years ago, it was a PO box number for one person.
Yeah.
In the 90s, I was involved in a committee to try and look at having an LGBT centre. And it was Tom, do you remember Tom? And it was Dwayne Farrell, and it was, it was kind of Rainbow were really the only funded organisation, and Lassie were the only funded organisations, and we were looking at creating an LGBT centre at that point. So
it'd be great to even have a chat about that, and because I knew it was going to be part of this project, the journey to get there.
And I do, and I keep promising Mariana, but I have minutes from the 90s in my filing cabinet. You know, when I had posters from Pride from early 2000s.
I'm afraid to think of what I might have in my final cabinet. Like I'm actually like sometimes I go, I'm gonna have to go through those boxes one day, aren't I?
But the thing is that you just hand them over to Joe for the history project, and
that's
then
all. That's what I'm
and
going to do.
and Prony will then archive them.
We'll archive them first on our online archive.
Well, yes.
We'll happily go through any boxes for you. Happily.
Well, here, that's good. I might just hand the boxes to you and go, there you go.
Be great.
Absolutely.
I also remember, sorry, Rita, I'm going back 15 years ago. Myself and you, I don't even know what it was. We were at some sort of conference in East Belfast. It was quite a nice hotel.
We were in the Stormont. It was the Stormont Hotel.
Yeah. And they must only have mobile phones, but I remember you and you were cursing everything. Going, big money there. The Keystone project, I think it maybe was.
That's right.
£500,000. And that is as clear in my head.
That's right.
Today, you know, yeah, crazy.
Yeah, audacity. That's what that is, audacity. And it's worth, like, we've always been audacious. We've always asked big. And that £500,000 for the Keystone project was a complete audacious big ask. And the chances of us getting it were slim. You know, they didn't give that sort of money too often, and it had never before been given to a queer organisation for something that wasn't directly health related. So all of the gay men's funding at that point was tied into sexual health. So that's one of the reasons the lesbians hadn't had much money, because we didn't have a health crisis in the way that gay men were, like HIV and all that kind of stuff. So this £500,000, and I remember I mentioned it to Joe earlier on. You and I, we'd been up at some gig, I think, in Stormont. And we'd gone across to the Stormont Hotel, a few of us, and I can't remember why either. But you and I were there and chatting, and the phone call came through that we'd got the £500,000. And I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. I mean, we did amazing things. We really did. There was a lot of ground broken back then. And I think, I don't know, Grania and Fidelma, who have known me a long, long time, like we had some crack. Like we really did have some crack.
£500,000 buys you really big shovels to break ground.
Really
get a
big
whole,
shovels and
you
great
get
crack.
you get a whole digger for £500,000.
You would get a whole freaking digger for £500,000. So I don't know where, I worry sometimes about the younger ones today. Are they having the crack? Are they having the opportunity, to burn shit down and have the crack while you're doing it? So that's, I'd like to see more rabble rousing of the sort of rabble rousing we did when we were young. But I don't know, maybe I just don't get out enough.
Brilliant. Emma, do you have a question?
Yeah, just on the history, Cara, do you remember a blanket that we all made? Millions with Orla was there then.
All the
Is
children.
that still around?
I don't know where that is. I think I was talking to Mary Ellen or Joe about that.
Because I remember we all did like a square
That's
in the
right.
black box,
Yeah, it was lovely. It was lovely. But
and that was part of like a history project. And
think-
then Alex was only like God, she was only then 7 or something, so that was a good like
I think that was all maybe
17 years ago or something.
I think it was maybe
Pardon?
already there when I started. But I remember it as clearly. The children, everybody drew actual pictures.
Every
of it.
family had like a square, and then someone put it all together. Because Grania was talking about it recently. We should do like a revamped version.
Yeah, I think it'd be lovely.
It'd be good to see that blanket if it was still around.
I don't know where it is. I think we moved. We've moved once.
Mm.
I don't think it's in our office now. But I still have the big picture already. I don't know if you commissioned this as soon as you come into our office. It's like a girl flowing like red hair, and it says Lassie on the bottom of it still, and that's still, it's a big giant picture, but I can't get rid of it. It's still up on the wall, a wall that's way too small for
That
it.
sounds like something Heather Fleming might have done.
That definitely sounds like a Heather Fleming.
Lovely. But it says Lassie, at the bottom.
Lassie, we used to say that was Ulster Scots for lesbian.
Rita,
I mean,
when I first started the job, I was meeting people and they were like, who do you work for? Lassie. And what does that stand for? Lesbian Advocacy Services Initiative. And you just seen the blank expression, what? And then other people were like, do you work with dogs? Lassie dogs? Or is it Lassie, like as in we girl, like girls Lassie? And then had a discussion with the board, and then and then we did rebrand. But yeah, you got some funny looks,
You surely did get some funny looks. I don't know who came up with that name, really. But I think they might have been on the mushrooms. It wasn't an easy name to carry. It really wasn't.
I
It
blame
was
Mary
not an
Query.
easy name.
Just blame Mary Query for everything.
I was going to say
Blame
that.
Mary. I don't think it was Mary. I think it was a collective. I think it's one of those jobs like what happens if you let a committee design a horse? You end up with a camel. So I think let a committee come up with a name, you end up with Lassie. So yeah, I must say I'm glad it changed. I never enjoyed. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to say I'm from
Cara,
Lassie.
does here and did the letters actually stand for anything?
No, after discussion with some of the women and our board, and Ruth McCarthy was involved in that kind of creative stuff, that kind of was the one that resonated with most people. And the reason why we have the HERE in capitals obviously is the her bit. So here, just as a place to feel safe, here is a place to feel at home, here is a place to meet friends, and so it really just went from there. It was originally meant to be called Here, and then I'll never forget it. Joe Tracy will kill me for saying this during this, but I'll say it anyway. We literally had, say, £50 for rebrand and stuff. We had literally no money, but we spent this £50 and got lovely pens and pencils and rubbers or something like that. And whatever happened in Company's House, the Here name wasn't available anymore when we were going to do it. And I remember looking at Tracy's face, she was white as a ghost, and she's like, oh my God, the name's not available, and we've spent all our money getting the stuff rebranded. So Here NI was available. So that's how it's called Here NI, because it was originally meant to be Here, and then that name wasn't available when we went to register. But sometimes people go, Harry and I, Harry, or do you work with people who are hearing difficulties? So you still get an element of that misunderstanding, but hey.
Yeah. But at least you don't have to say lesbians all the time anymore. It was a fucking nightmare, I swear to God. If I call myself queer now, it's much easier. Just to be queer.
Amazing. Any more questions before we stop the recording? No, going once, going twice. Okay, I'm just going to stop the recording and then we can see if anybody has questions after that.